Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Now, let me take you back to that night. The night everything I'd built came crashing down. Or so she thought. The grand ballroom at the Meridian Tower. 1,800 square feet of marble floors, crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. 200 guests in designer suits and evening gowns, champagne flutes catching the light like tiny stars. A jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. This was the night we'd been planning for 3 years. This was Lara's night. My wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, though I didn't know it yet, stood at the center of it all, radiant in a midnight blue gown that probably cost $15,000. Her auburn hair was swept up, diamond earrings catching every flash from the photographer's camera. She was glowing, confident, untouchable. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC's voice boomed through the sound system. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Morrison & Associates Law, Lara Morrison. The crowd erupted. I stood in the front row, clapping along with everyone else, pride swelling in my chest despite the knot that had been tightening there for months. This was our dream. Her dream, technically, but I'd made it possible. $20 million possible. Let me back up. My name is Jonathan Pierce, 42 years old, though people say I look younger. Maybe it's the running, or maybe it's just good genes. I made my fortune in tech investments, got in early on 3 startups that became household names, got out at exactly the right time. By 35, I had more money than I knew what to do with. That's when I met Lara. She was 34 then, a senior associate at a mid-tier firm, brilliant but frustrated. She'd come home every night complaining about partners who took credit for her work, about outdated systems and ethical shortcuts that made her stomach turn. Over wine one evening, she'd looked at me with those sharp green eyes and said, "I could do it better. I could build something that actually matters." "So do it," I'd told her. "I'll back you." 3 years of planning, 2 years of execution, 1 year of watching her slowly transform from the woman I loved into someone I barely recognized. But tonight wasn't about that. Tonight was about celebrating what we'd built together. The firm had launched 6 months ago with a small team of 5 attorneys. Now it was 23, high-profile clients, media attention, success after success. Lara took the microphone and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice smooth and practiced. "When I started this journey, I had a vision of creating a law firm built on integrity, innovation, and impact. A place where justice isn't just a word we throw around, but something we actually deliver." Applause. I smiled, remembering the late nights we'd spent crafting that mission statement at our kitchen table. "But I couldn't have done this alone," she continued, and my heart lifted. Finally, the acknowledgement. The partnership recognized. I had help from so many incredible people, my team, who believed in this vision, our clients, who trusted us with their most important matters, and, she paused, her eyes finding mine across the crowd, and my husband, Jonathan. More applause. I nodded, keeping my expression humble. This was her moment, not mine. "Jonathan taught me something very important," Lara said, and something in her tone made my smile falter. "He taught me that in business, you need to know the difference between an asset and a liability." Confused laughter rippled through the audience. Where was she going with this? "He taught me that sometimes you need to cut your losses." Her smile was cold now, surgical. "That emotional attachments can cloud your judgment, that in the end, it's all about the bottom line." The room had gone very quiet. I could feel eyes turning toward me. Lara descended from the stage, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Each step felt like a countdown. She walked straight toward me, and in her hand was a white envelope. "For once, Jonathan," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "let's make something official, without your money." She slid the envelope across the cocktail table in front of me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The entire ballroom had become a vacuum. "Go ahead," she urged, that smile still frozen on her face. "Open it." My fingers felt numb as I picked up the envelope. The paper was heavy, expensive. Of course it was. Lara had always had expensive taste. I pulled out the documents inside. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words swam in front of my eyes. Petitioner, Lara Morrison. Respondent, Jonathan Pierce. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. Someone near me gasped. The photographer's camera flashed. I looked up at Lara, searching her face for some sign that this was a mistake, a joke, something other than what it appeared to be. "You're serious," I said. It wasn't a question. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Her voice was steady, matter-of-fact. Sign it, Jonathan. Let's end this cleanly. In that moment, I learned the difference between partnership and possession. I thought we were building something together. She thought I was just the bank. The crowd was murmuring now, whispers spreading like wildfire. I could see phones coming out, social media posts being drafted in real time. This was going to be everywhere by morning. A pen appeared in front of me. Lara was holding it out, waiting. And you know what? I smiled. Because in that split second, as I looked at the woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd supported and believed in and funded, I realized something profound. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. I took the pen from her hand. Our fingers didn't touch. You want clean? I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Let's make it clean. I turned to the last page, found the signature line, and signed my name. Jonathan Michael Pierce. The same signature that had been on every investment document, every lease agreement, every contract that had made Morrison and Associates law possible. The crowd's murmur became a roar. I could hear scattered gasps, nervous laughter from people who still thought this might be some elaborate performance piece. I stood up, straightening my jacket, looked Lara directly in the eyes. Congratulations, I said quietly. You're free. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Doubt. Regret. It was gone before I could name it. I turned away from her, scanning the room until I found who I was looking for. Richard Chen, my CFO, standing near the bar with a Manhattan in his hand. Our eyes met. He straightened immediately, reading something in my expression. I walked over to him, ignoring the cameras, ignoring the whispers. The crowd parted around me like water. Richard, I said, keeping my voice low and even. Initiate the reversal, all of it, tonight. He didn't ask questions. That's why I paid him 7 figures a year. He just nodded, set down his drink, and pulled out his phone. How fast? He asked. Immediately. It's going to make waves. That's the idea? Lara was still on the stage, the microphone back in her hand, trying to regain control of the narrative. I know this is unexpected, she was saying, her PR training kicking in. But sometimes in life, you need to make difficult decisions for your own growth. I wasn't listening anymore. I was watching Richard's fingers fly across his phone screen, watching him make calls to our legal team, our bank, our investment managers. The machinery was already in motion. You see, here's what Lara had forgotten in her rush to publicly humiliate me. I wasn't just her husband, I was her sole investor. Every dollar that had gone into Morrison and Associates law had come from me. The office lease, my name, the operating accounts, my capital, the initial client acquisitions, my network. She thought she owned an empire. She forgot who built the foundation. The contracts had been carefully written, by my attorneys, not hers. She'd been so eager to get started, so confident in her vision, that she'd barely glanced at the fine print. Every investment agreement included standard protective clauses, change in material circumstances, dissolution of partnership, immediate capital recall provisions. In business terms, I owned 85% of the firm. Lara was essentially an employee with a fancy title, and I'd just been publicly divorced by that employee. My phone buzzed, a text from Richard. First wave initiated. Building lease termination filed. Operating accounts frozen pending restructure. Legal team standing by. Another buzz. My lead attorney, Sarah. Saw the video already. This is grounds for immediate withdrawal under Section 7.3, confirming you want to proceed. I typed back, proceed with everything, leave nothing. I felt cold, but it wasn't anger. It was clarity. For months, I'd felt something was wrong. The late nights that became later. The business trips that seemed unnecessary. The way she'd stopped looking at me across the dinner table. Stopped asking about my day. Stopped pretending that I was anything more than a means to an end. I'd ignored it. Made excuses. Told myself she was just stressed, just focused, just building something important. But she'd known. She'd been planning this. The grand opening wasn't just a celebration. It was a stage for my dismissal. A public declaration that she'd outgrown me. She wanted to cut me out while keeping everything I'd built for her. That wasn't going to happen. I walked toward the exit, past guests who were still trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Someone touched my arm. An old colleague, concern on his face. "Jonathan, are you okay? Do you need—" "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. I'm exactly where I need to be. Outside, the night air was cool against my face. My driver, Marcus, was already pulling the car around. He'd been with me for 12 years, long enough to read situations without explanation. "Home, Mr. Pierce?" he asked as I slid into the back seat. "The office," I said. "We have work to do." As we pulled away from the Meridian Tower, my phone lit up with a notification, a wire transfer confirmation. $20 million flowing back into my primary account from the firm's escrow. Transfer complete, $20,000 restored. I didn't take revenge, I just reclaimed what was mine. Inside the Meridian Tower, the party was trying to continue. The jazz quartet was playing again. Waiters were refilling champagne glasses. But the energy had shifted. Everyone was on their phones, checking social media, sending texts, watching the video clips that were already going viral. Did you see that? Was that real? Oh my God, she served him divorce papers at her own event. Lara was in the coat check room, her back to the wall, breathing hard. Her assistant, Melissa, was hovering anxiously. That was unexpected, Melissa said carefully. It was perfect, Lara said, but her voice shook slightly. Clean break. Public statement, no ambiguity. Maybe you should go back out there? People are... Let them talk. Tomorrow this will be a story about a powerful woman taking control of her life. The press will love it. Melissa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned. It's David, from accounting. Tell him I'll call him tomorrow. He says it's urgent, Lara sighed, taking the phone. David, this really isn't... Whatever David said made her face go white. What do you mean, frozen? Her voice was sharp now, cutting. That's not possible. Check again. She listened, and with each passing second, her expression hardened. All of them, every account. Melissa stepped closer, alarm spreading across her face. How is that even? Lara stopped mid-sentence. Realization was dawning, cold and terrible. Jonathan. She thrust the phone back at Melissa and strode toward the ballroom, her earlier composure cracking. She grabbed Richard Chen by the arm as he was heading toward the exit. You, she hissed. What did he tell you? Richard looked at her calmly, professionally. I'm afraid I can't discuss Mr. Pierce's business decisions, Mrs. Morrison. This is my business. He can't just... Actually, Richard said, and there was something almost sympathetic in his voice. He can. I'd suggest you contact your attorney, immediately. He gently extracted his arm from her grip and continued walking. Lara stood in the middle of her triumph, surrounded by guests who were now watching her with a mixture of pity and fascination. Her phone began to ring, then ring again and again. By midnight, the world was ending. Lara sat in her corner office, the office that Jonathan had furnished with a custom mahogany desk, Herman Miller chair, and original artwork, watching her phones light up like Christmas trees. David from accounting, Michelle from HR, the building management company, 3 different board members, her lead attorney, the marketing firm, 2 major clients, 456 missed calls in total. Her business partner, Marcus Webb, burst through the door without knocking. He was 53, a veteran attorney who joined the firm 6 months ago, lured by promises of equity and stability. Someone needs to explain to me, he said, his voice dangerously quiet, why our operating account is showing a 0 balance. It's a mistake, Lara said automatically. A glitch in the system. It's not a mistake. I just got off the phone with the bank. Your ex-husband, Hoch, has initiated a complete capital withdrawal. Every penny he invested is being pulled back. He can't do that. We have contracts. We have contracts that he wrote, Marcus snapped. I just spent the last hour with our counsel. Apparently there are about 15 different clauses that allow him to recall capital in the event of... Let me see if I can remember the exact language. Material change in partnership relationship or breach of fiduciary duty. Lara felt like the floor was tilting. That's not... You served him divorce papers at a public event, Marcus continued, in front of clients, press, and competitors. I'm guessing his lawyers are going to argue that constitutes both a material change and a breach of fiduciary duty. But the firm is mine. I built this. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. You built it with his money, on his credit, using his reputation to open doors. Without his capital, we have 7 days of payroll left. Maybe. And that's if the building management doesn't execute the termination clause he apparently triggered on the lease. The phones kept ringing. Lara's hands were shaking now. What about our clients? Our 3 biggest clients all came through Jonathan's network. I'm guessing they've already received some interesting phone calls tonight. Marcus ran his hand through his graying hair. Jesus, Lara, what were you thinking? I was thinking I was free, she wanted to say. I was thinking I could finally be my own person, not just Jonathan Pierce's wife. But looking at Marcus's face, at the phones that wouldn't stop ringing, at the empire that was crumbling around her in real time, those words died in her throat. Across town, in his glass-walled office on the 40th floor, Jonathan sat in front of his computer, methodically signing documents. Each signature severed another connection, withdrew another investment, activated another protective clause. His phone buzzed. Sarah, his attorney. Building management confirmed lease termination. They have 30 days. Also, Morrison and Associates malpractice insurance. That was through your corporate policy. Cancellation paperwork is ready for your signature. Another text, this one from Richard. 3 clients have requested immediate transition meetings. 2 more asking about your availability. The competitors are circling. Jonathan allowed himself a small smile. He'd spent 3 years building Lara's dream. It was only fair that he spend one night taking it apart. His computer chimed with an incoming video call. He accepted it, and a familiar face appeared on screen. James Harrison, senior partner at Harrison & Klein, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. "Jonathan," James said warmly, "I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. I saw some interesting news tonight about you and Lara. I imagine everyone did. I want you to know that our firm has always valued our relationship with you, and if you're looking for new legal representation, for yourself or for any ventures you might be planning, we'd be honored to discuss possibilities." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "Actually, James, I might have something even more interesting to propose. How would you feel about a partnership? I provide capital and client relationships. You provide expertise and infrastructure. We build something new, something better." He could see the interest spark in James's eyes. "I'm listening." As they talked, Jonathan's phone continued to buzz with notifications. Every one of them was another piece of Lara's world falling apart. Every one of them was another opportunity emerging from the rubble. When pride builds empires, reality eventually collects the debt. The first media reports hit at 6:47 a.m. Video clips from the grand opening had gone viral overnight. 12 million views and counting. The headlines were brutal. Power couples, public divorce shocks, legal community. Law firm founder serves husband divorce papers at grand opening. Morrison and Associates in crisis as investor pulls 20 million. By 9 a.m., the story had evolved. Morrison and Associates faces closure after capital withdrawal. Employees report frozen accounts, bounced paychecks. Legal community questions firm's financial stability. Lara hadn't slept. She sat in her home office, the one Jonathan had built for her, with custom shelving and perfect lighting, surrounded by documents and empty coffee cups. Her team had been on emergency calls all night, trying to find alternative funding, alternative solutions, alternative anything. There was nothing. Her phone rang again. This time it was one of her oldest friends, Catherine, calling. "Lara, honey, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," Lara snapped, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry. It's been a difficult night. I saw the videos. Everyone has. But Lara, what were you thinking, doing that at the grand opening?" "I was thinking it was time to move on, to build my own success without living in someone else's shadow." "But he funded your success. How did you not see this coming?" That was the question, wasn't it? How had she been so blind? The truth was, she'd known. Deep down, she'd known that divorcing Jonathan meant risking everything. But she'd been so confident, so certain that the firm was strong enough to stand on its own, that she was indispensable enough, talented enough, connected enough to survive without him. Pride. That's what it was. Pure, stupid pride. Another call came through. Marcus Webb again. "Tell me you have good news," Lara said. "I have news. Whether it's good depends on your definition. I just got off the phone with Harrison & Klein." Lara's stomach dropped. Harrison & Klein was their biggest competitor. "And?" "They're offering to acquire our client list and hire our top 5 attorneys. No buyout for the partners. Just straight employment contracts." "That's not an acquisition. That's a liquidation." "It's a life raft, Lara. Take it or leave it." "Who initiated this contact? Did you call them?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "They called us, this morning. Early. Almost like they knew exactly what was happening before it became public knowledge." "Jonathan," Lara breathed. "Probably. Look, I'm meeting with them at noon. The rest of the partners want to hear what they're offering. You should be there." After he hung up, Lara scrolled through her phone's call log. 456 missed calls. Most of them she'd returned. The rest she couldn't bear to answer. Former friends, colleagues, board members demanding explanations, creditors suddenly concerned about payment. The professional network she'd carefully built over a decade was evaporating like morning mist. Her doorbell rang. She ignored it. Rang again and again. Finally, she went downstairs, still in yesterday's gown, her makeup smeared, her feet bare. She threw open the door, ready to tell whoever it was to go away. It was her mother. "Oh, sweetheart," her mother said, and that was all it took. Lara crumbled, tears finally breaking through the brittle shell of control she'd been maintaining. Her mother held her while she sobbed on the doorstep of the house Jonathan had bought them 4 years ago. "What have I done?" Lara choked out. "Mom, what have I done?" Her mother just held her tighter and didn't answer, because there was no answer that would make this better. Across the city, Jonathan was in a conference room at Harrison and Klein, surrounded by senior partners. The energy was electric, opportunistic. They could smell blood in the water. "We can absorb Morrison's entire client base within 60 days, James Harrison was saying. Their associates are already sending resumes. It's a complete collapse. "What about Lara herself?" another partner asked. "She's talented. We all know that. Should we extend an offer?" The room went quiet, everyone looking at Jonathan. He considered it for a moment. In another life, he would have said yes immediately. Lara was talented, brilliant even. But talent without character was just a liability waiting to happen. "That's your decision," he said finally. "But I would suggest you carefully consider whether someone who would publicly betray a personal and business partner fits your firm's culture." The message was clear. They wouldn't be offering Lara anything. Jonathan's phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. County records show she filed the divorce petition 3 weeks ago. This wasn't spontaneous. She planned this. 3 weeks, while they were still sleeping in the same bed, still eating breakfast together, still playing the part of the happy couple. She'd planned his humiliation for 3 weeks. Jonathan forwarded the text to Richard with a simple instruction. Make sure the judge sees this timeline. "Now," James said, pulling up a presentation, "let's talk about the new venture. I'm thinking we call it Harrison Pierce and Associates. Your name first, if you're comfortable with that. Equal partnership structure, but you maintain control of the capital and client relationships." Jonathan listened, nodded, made suggestions. This was what he was good at. Building things, creating structures, turning opportunities into empires. He'd done it for Lara. Now he was doing it for himself. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Mitchell from Morrison and Associates. Don't know if you remember me. I worked on the Patterson case. Just wanted to say thank you for what you did. She was toxic, and we all knew it. A bunch of us are hoping you might have opportunities at your new firm." Jonathan saved the number. Good people were worth keeping. The next morning, Jonathan was in his new office, temporary space that Harrison and Klein had provided while their formal partnership was being established, reviewing contract proposals when his assistant, Claire, buzzed him. "Mr. Pierce, there's a Lara Morrison here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." Jonathan took a slow breath. He'd been expecting this, dreading it, if he was honest. "Send her in." Lara entered like a storm. She'd clearly tried to pull herself together. Fresh clothes, makeup, hair styled, but he could see the cracks, the dark circles under her eyes, the tremor in her hands, the desperate energy radiating off her. "You ruined me," she said without preamble. No greeting, no small talk. Straight to accusation. Jonathan gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." "I don't want to sit. I want answers. How could you do this?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her. The woman he'd loved for 8 years. The woman he'd supported, encouraged, funded. The woman who'd handed him divorce papers in front of 200 people. "How could I do this?" he repeated softly. "Lara, you stood up in front of our friends, our colleagues, our business partners, and publicly ended our marriage. You turned what should have been a private matter into a spectacle. And you did it on the very stage that my money built. I wanted to be free," she said, and her voice cracked. "I wanted to prove that I could succeed on my own, that I wasn't just Jonathan Pierce's wife. And instead, you proved that you can't tell the difference between independence and self-destruction." She flinched. "Did you even read the investment contracts?" Jonathan asked. "Or did you just sign them because you trusted me to take care of the boring details while you played lawyer? That's not fair." "Fair?" Jonathan stood up, and for the first time she saw real anger flash across his face. "You want to talk about fair? I spent 3 years supporting your dream, putting my own projects on hold, introducing you to clients, putting my reputation on the line every time I vouched for your firm. And you repaid me by planning my public humiliation 3 weeks in advance. How did you? The divorce filing is public record, Lara. You submitted it 3 weeks ago, which means that for 3 weeks you sat across the breakfast table from me, smiled, let me kiss you goodbye, and knew that you were going to destroy everything, not just our marriage, everything. Tears were streaming down her face now. You loved me once. I still do. The admission surprised them both. Jonathan sat back down, suddenly exhausted. That's why I let you keep the name of the firm. For now. What does that mean? It means that Morrison and Associates is yours to save or bury. I've withdrawn my capital, terminated the leases and contracts, and taken back my clients. But I'm not going to destroy what's left. That part is up to you. There is no what's left, Lara said bitterly. Without funding, without clients, without infrastructure, there's nothing. Then rebuild. You're talented enough, smart enough. You just need to decide if you're humble enough. She stared at him. Is this mercy or revenge? Neither. It's reality. Jonathan opened his laptop, pulled up a document, and turned it to face her. I had my lawyers draft a settlement agreement. The divorce goes through, quick and clean. I keep all business assets and accounts acquired or created during our marriage. You keep the house, the car, and a one-time settlement of $2 million. More than fair, considering. Considering what? Considering you tried to keep $20 million of my money while publicly humiliating me. Lara looked at the screen, reading through the terms. $2 million. It was generous, far more than she'd have gotten if you wanted to fight dirty, but it was also final. No claims to the business, no future stake in his success. What about Morrison and Associates? What about it? You own it. I just own everything it needs to function. Jonathan closed the laptop. Here's some free advice, since you're not my wife anymore and I have no obligation to hold back. You spent so much energy trying to prove you didn't need me that you forgot to build something that could actually stand on its own. You wanted the spotlight, but you forgot that someone needs to pay the electric bill. That's cruel. No, Lara. Cruel was what you did 2 nights ago. This is just honest. She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold. I thought we were happy. I thought we were building something together. We were, until you decided that partnership meant ownership and that marriage meant obligation. Jonathan stood as well, walking to the window. You know what the saddest part is? If you'd just talked to me, if you told me you felt suffocated or overshadowed or whatever it was you were feeling, we could have figured it out. But you didn't want communication. You wanted a dramatic exit. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, but sorry doesn't rebuild what you burned down. They stood in silence for a long moment. Outside, the city continued its daily rhythm, indifferent to their personal tragedy. What happens now? Lara finally asked. Now? You sign the settlement papers. You figure out what you're going to do with Morrison and Associates, shut it down, sell it, whatever, and you move on with your life. And you? Jonathan turned to face her. I'm going to do what I should have done from the beginning. Build something for myself. Not for us, not for you, for me. Mercy isn't weakness. It's just the last signature before closure. 6 months later. The offices of Harrison, Pierce & Klein occupied 3 floors of the Sentinel Tower, glass and steel and success. Jonathan stood in his corner office, looking out at the city skyline. The view was better here than it had been at Morrison and Associates. Everything was better here. Mr. Pierce? Claire's voice came through the intercom. The reporter from Forbes is here for your interview. Send her in. The reporter, Amanda Chen, was young and sharp-eyed, already pulling out her recording device. Thank you for making time, she said. My readers are fascinated by your comeback story. Comeback suggests I went somewhere, Jonathan said with a slight smile. I just redirected. She laughed, settling into her chair. Fair enough. So, Harrison, Pierce & Klein is now the fastest-growing law firm in the region. 43 attorneys in 6 months. 8-figure revenue. How did you build this so quickly? Good people, clear vision, and learning from past mistakes. Speaking of the past, I have to ask, what happened with Morrison and Associates? Jonathan had been expecting this question. It was the elephant in every room, the scandal that had made him temporarily famous 6 months ago. What happened was a lesson in the difference between building on solid ground versus building on someone else's foundation, he said carefully. My ex-wife is very talented, but talent alone doesn't create sustainability. Morrison and Associates dissolved 3 months ago. Lara Morrison surrendered her law license last month. Do you feel any responsibility for that outcome? I feel sadness, Jonathan said truthfully, but not responsibility. Adults make choices. Choices have consequences. Amanda made notes. Your new firm has a reputation for ethical practices and transparency. Is that a reaction to what happened? It's a commitment to not repeating certain patterns. Jonathan leaned forward. Here's what I learned. True partnership requires mutual respect and transparency, A willingness to support each other's success without losing yourself in the process. That's what we've built here. And on a personal level, how are you doing? Jonathan considered the question. Was he happy? Not quite. Happiness felt like something that belonged to a different version of himself, the one who'd believed in happily ever after. But he was satisfied, fulfilled, building something meaningful. I'm doing well, he said. Better than I expected, actually. After the interview concluded and Amanda left, Jonathan returned to the window. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. FYI, Morrison filed for bankruptcy today. Final hearing next week. Thought you'd want to know. Jonathan stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. That part of his life was over. He'd closed that chapter the moment he'd signed those divorce papers. His office door opened and James Harrison stuck his head in. Hey, got a minute? There's a new client I want you to meet with. Tech startup, looking for representation on their Series B funding, right in your wheelhouse. I'll be right there, Jonathan said. As he gathered his things, his phone buzzed one more time. An unknown number. Against his better judgment, he opened the message. Jonathan, it's Lara. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm leaving the city, starting over somewhere else. You were right about everything. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for who I became. I hope you build everything you deserve. Jonathan read it twice, then set his phone down without responding. Some apologies came too late. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. He walked out of his office, closing the door behind him, ready for the next meeting, the next deal, the next chapter. 3 months later, a mutual acquaintance would tell him that Lara had moved to Denver and was working as an associate at a small firm, starting over from the bottom. He would nod, say something polite about hoping she found what she was looking for, and never think about it again. Because the truth was, Lara had taught him something more valuable than any business lesson. The difference between love and enabling, between support and sacrifice, between partnership and losing yourself. When a reporter asked him months later what inspired his success, Jonathan smiled and said simply, "A lesson in what happens when trust gets outsourced." The reporter asked him to explain. Some people, Jonathan said, mistake generosity for weakness. They think that because someone loves them, they're entitled to everything that person has built, but love without respect is just exploitation wearing a disguise. And how do you protect yourself from that? You don't, Jonathan said. You just make sure that when someone shows you who they really are, you believe them the first time.